Queen Ingrid, wielding a whip, relentlessly lashes at Eric's back. The cause of her fury is King Harold's departure to England, leaving Eric, who not only covets the queen but also plots to usurp the throne, in charge. Ingrid seizes the opportunity to teach Eric a lesson, unexpectedly for Eric. After indulging her rage, Ingrid invites him to her bed.
Come to bed, my kingmaker.
Poor Harold, little does he know how many times he has been cuckolded. On this day, Ingrid was up to her usual witchcraft tricks. She gathers a poisonous mushroom, a toxic berry, and some tree bark, grinding them into powder. She then cuts herself on the tongue, beneath her breast, and on her palm. Ingrid mixes her blood with the powder and spreads the concoction on a wooden plank, hammering a nail into it while chanting spells.
I drive it into the eye of Ossothor. Hear my prayer and heed my commands, and bless this stave.
With that, a cursed monolith that would cause a person to go blind was made. She slips the cursed tablet under Eric's pillow, aiming to hex the man who dared to steal the throne. At night, Ingrid nonchalantly tends to Eric's wounds and gifts him a splendid robe, behaving like a happy couple, laughing and talking. But the next morning Eric was literally blind in one eye, no matter how much he cleaned it.
I'm half blind.
By afternoon, he is completely blind. Watching him panic and stumble around the room, Ingrid feigns ignorance.
I'm blind. I'm blind.
Days later, Eric, now acting as king, summons the chieftains, falsely claiming Harold's death and demanding their loyalty. To build new fortifications, Eric raises the chieftains' taxes. Who would take a blind man seriously? Seeing Eric fail to command respect, Ingrid tells the chieftains a story. Just a few days ago, a Christian missionary entered a small Danish kingdom and converted the king's faith. Now, that nation has declared itself a Christian state, and despite the people's disagreement, they are set to abolish the worship of the old gods. For the Vikings, this is akin to a catastrophe. To prevent such a catastrophe in Kattegat, they must bolster their defenses against all cultural invasions. Ingrid's speech persuades several lords to agree to pay taxes for Kattegat's protection. Realizing Ingrid's influential power, Eric understands her ambitions are greater than he imagined. Thus, Eric realizes he has fallen into Ingrid's trap, regretting his involvement with this femme fatale. But now, all Eric can think of is revenge. He bribes a slave, Orlig, with freedom to kill Ingrid. However, Orlig's demeanor and expressions do not inspire confidence in his capabilities. Despite the urgency, Eric, being blind, assigns this crucial task carelessly. Coincidentally, Orlig's girlfriend, Nissa, is Ingrid's maid. Desiring freedom, Orlig shares his task with Nissa, hoping for her help. Eric has one condition: to avoid suspicion, he must not be present when Orlig strikes. Nissa suggests she could visit Eric for intimacy, as it wasn't their first time. Yet on the day of action, Ingrid is prepared. Her guards ambush Orlig, who immediately confesses Eric's involvement. Meanwhile, Nissa keeps to the plan, engaging intimately with Eric in the cabin. Eric slaps Nissa in the face afterwards, but Nissa isn't angry because Eric will soon pay in blood.
I know it.
I'm here. I myself am here.
Thus, the unworthy king dies in a small cabin, marking the shortest reign in Kattegat. Later, Ingrid executes Orlig for treason, revealing that it was Nissa who betrayed both men for her own assent. The scene shifts back to North America. Floki shares his experiences after leaving Iceland. In short, he survived a volcanic eruption, drifted at sea in a small boat, and was eventually rescued by the Skraeling people, who have since taken care of him. One day Nad, the gold thief, snuck into the Skrins camp to see if there was any gold, but after a long search he found nothing. A girl appears, and Nad brandishes a knife to intimidate her, attracting the chieftain's son. Nad is not only reckless but also foolish. In such circumstances, what good can gold possibly do? Even though Nad managed to escape the camp, he was still captured by the Skraeling people, who possess formidable hunting skills. Ub explains to Pekatalit that he was unaware of the situation but will not protect the guilty. They will judge Nad by their own laws. Ultimately, everyone agreed to subject Nad to the Blood Eagle punishment. Upon hearing this, Nad was so terrified that he broke down in tears. Vikings know what that means. However, Other encourages Nad not to fear, as enduring the pain could grant him entry to Valhalla, but as Ub prepares to execute, Nad falters, too frightened to endure.
No.
Ub, seeing this, relents. After all, Valhalla isn't for everyone.
Valhalla is not for you, my friend. Let me put you out of your misery.
This Nad is a disgrace to the Vikings. Afterwards the Skrins said something meaningful to Torvi.
You understand that when we said you were welcome to this place, we did not mean you were welcome to possess it.
This is the famed Battle of Edington, where Alfred's forces are fully assembled, ready to confront the invading Vikings in a decisive battle. Yet Alfred is unaware of why Ivar chose this particular battlefield. He simply wants to drive these demons out of Wessex, but as his troops enter the fog-enshrouded forest, they have already lost half the battle.
Halt!
Amidst the mist, Harold leads the Viking forces to emerge right in front of them. Cautious Alfred dares not strike rashly. He orders his soldiers to advance in groups. However, the unfortunate vanguard steps into Viking traps. Spikes instantly piercing their lower legs, a tactic Ivar mentioned earlier about crippling the enemy. Strangely, the Vikings retreat. Though Alfred does not understand the enemy's tactics, he cannot let his soldiers languish in pits, so he sends more troops to rescue those caught in traps. But this is exactly what Ivar intended. The soldiers, needing to free their hands to aid others, drop their weapons and shields. At this moment, Vikings hidden underground charge out, turning these unarmed soldiers into easy prey. It's a case of losing more to save one. Ivar's manipulation of the enemy's psyche gives the battle a favorable start. After a feigned retreat, Harold returns to the fight, marking the true beginning of the conflict.
Soldiers, with me!
To better command the battle, Ivar constructs a small suspension bridge in the trees, positioning many archers there. Thus, for the Vikings, the battle is more of a heavily advantaged defensive fight. Alfred, infuriated by Ivar, curses loudly, but Ivar's strategies don't end there. He sends men disguised as English soldiers who infiltrate the rear, kill nuns, and kidnap Queen Elswith. They drag Elswith onto the battlefield to demoralize the English troops and distract Alfred. However, they underestimate Elswith. Amidst the chaos, she seizes a moment to knock down a warrior, then grabs a nailed plank from the ground and smashes the enemy's head, quickly escaping the battlefield. Alfred, left unprotected, finds himself in grave danger as an enemy sword pierces his underarm during the fight. Luckily, the sword didn't hit Alfred's vitals, but if it had been a little more to the right, he would have been dead. As Alfred nearly falls, he thinks he sees a familiar figure covered in blood and crowned with thorns as Lord, reinforcing his belief that God saved him in this critical moment. If the battle continues in this manner, the Saxons are doomed to total defeat. Yet miraculously, the fog in the forest thickens. To avoid any mishaps, Ivar is forced to blow the retreat horn, inadvertently giving the Saxons a chance to breathe. Aldulf and the captain of the knights suggest retreating to strategize. However, no matter what they say, Alfred refuses to retreat. Having witnessed God himself, he fears nothing and would rather die on the battlefield than abandon his lord. Hearing that God appeared, Aldulf also wants to return to see for himself. Meanwhile, Harold, lost in the forest, is wandering when suddenly Aldulf appears behind him and thrusts a long sword through Harold's body. Aldulf intended to see God but ends up fortuitously killing the enemy king. Like winning a great prize, Harold, knowing his end is near, mutters about Valhalla, but Aldulf dismissively states that such a place does not exist. Then Harold sees his brother Halfdan, who promises to take him to Valhalla, and Aldulf looked at Harold quizzically, wondering who Harold was talking to. Just then, Harold stabs Aldulf in the neck with a dagger. Many viewers dislike the character of Harold, largely because the series portrays him as lacking integrity. He killed his own brother and usurped Bjorn's kingship. However, historically, Fairhair King Harold was a great monarch who unified all of Norway, and his descendants included many notable kings, such as King Harald Bluetooth and Harald Hardrada. With this, Harold's personal saga concludes. Farewell, Fairhair King. This is the final battle of Viking legends. Before the battle, a Viking cavalryman delivers a white flag, indicating their leader wishes to negotiate peace. Calmly, Ivar walks to the center of the field and throws the chess piece Alfred once gave him, to demonstrate his mercy and to prevent a bloodbath among the Saxons. Ivar proposes a truce and peace talks. However, Alfred throws the chess piece back to Ivar, understanding his nature as the most fearsome Viking. Ivar's sole desire is to kill and conquer. How could such a man sincerely seek peace? Alfred believes this is merely Ivar's tactic to stall for reinforcements, so he refuses the peace talks, determined to fight the devil to the end despite being at a disadvantage. Seeing this, Ivar wastes no more words, as they have already gained the upper hand in the first half of the battle. Ivar lays down the white chess piece, ready to commence the second half of the fight. Having learned from previous encounters, Alfred will no longer enter the forest. This time, they will face the enemy on an open plain, ensuring a fair fight. As a military strategist, Ivar meticulously plans each battle, rarely engaging in direct combat like Bjorn. However, this time Ivar must face his enemies directly on the plain, but they have prepared a batch of makeshift catapults. Thus, the Vikings hold the advantage in both numbers and equipment.
Our Lord Jesus Christ is with us.
Just after Alfred finishes his prayers, his crucifix is knocked down by a catapult. Although the Vikings seem to have the upper hand, the only and most crucial problem is that Ivar's eyes are becoming bluer by the moment, and he could suffer a full-body bone fracture due to his brittle bone disease at any time. But as the battle intensifies, Ivar sees the crisis unfolding. The battle is not going as he planned. Thinking it would be an easy victory, Ivar is forced to lead the remaining warriors into the fray, but his brittle bone disease strikes after just a few steps. Knowing his time is limited, Ivar still joins the battlefield, enduring the severe pain. The uncertain battle situation, combined with intense pain, causes Ivar to lose his initial confidence. He loudly calls to the gods, seeking some guidance.
What am I supposed to do? Lord, I'm afraid.
Alfred was doing the same thing. The pain from the sword wound in his armpit was unbearable, and he wanted to get direction from the Lord's response. Knowing that Hvitserk is Ragnar's son, the soldiers also understand the strategy of capturing the king to defeat the enemy, so they continuously attack Hvitserk. Seeing his brother in trouble, Ivar keeps moving towards Hvitserk. Even though Hvitserk is brave, he cannot withstand the relentless attacks, and soon, exhausted, he collapses to the ground. Ivar looks at his brother lying before him, remembering how Hvitserk chose him over everything else, since childhood. Besides their mother, only Hvitserk has truly cared for and looked after him. Hvitserk has always been protecting Ivar in his own way. Thinking this, Ivar hastens his steps to Hvitserk's side. He knows Hvitserk has done his best, This war was never theirs to fight. It was a war Ivar started to satisfy his own desire for conquest.
No, brother! You've done your work. Do not interfere anymore. All my life has been a preparation for this moment. I could never kill you. Your eyes are blue, Ira. Not today. I love you. I love you, brother. I love you. I love you. I love you. Now go. 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 Go.
Ivar, on the brink of an attack from his brittle bone disease, was acutely aware that his end was near. He could not last till the end of the battle. To ensure his brother's safety, Ivar pushed Hvitserk out of the battlefield, choosing to face his fate alone, for he had prepared for this moment all his life.
Dit weten vergen! Dit weten! Het die tijd weggedreven mij! Zomaar geswoken blijven die reinen! Het die weggedreven!
Ivar's roar seemed to awaken the gods, and he was filled with a divine energy as if possessed by a deity. The warriors around him let Ivar command them, their moves synchronized with their leader, as if they would never fall as long as Ivar stood. This also reflected the nature of the war itself. It was Ivar's personal battle, and the soldiers were merely tools to satisfy his desire for conquest.
One day, everyone will know of Ivar the Boneless.
At this point, Ivar's heightened state could be understood as a final surge of vitality. Ivar was well aware that his end was near, so when an unnamed soldier appeared before him, he knew it was time. He chose to confront his destiny, and indeed, the soldier did not hold back. I counted he stabbed him 8 times. In the shortest time, this soldier accomplished the most crucial act. Thus, the once invincible Ivar the Boneless died at the hands of an unnamed soldier, far away in a foreign land. Floki felt the fall of his disciple. For Floki, who had no children, Ivar must surely have been his last concern. Ivar's brittle bone disease finally struck. He fell hard to the ground, and this time, he could not rise again. Seeing this, Hvitserk hurried towards Ivar. Alfred, who was closely monitoring Ivar, immediately called a halt to the battle.
Deceits! On my command, six!
Not today.
The battle is
I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I'll never forget. I was boneless.
Thus, Ivar died in the arms of the brother who loved him most. Although everyone saw Ivar as a cold, ruthless, and ferocious man, let's not forget the environment in which he grew up. He was thrown out into the wilderness by his father on the day he was born, nearly left to be devoured by wolves. Throughout his life, Ivar was surrounded by mockery and cold stares. Yet, not only did Ivar survive in such harsh conditions, but he also developed intelligence and cunning that others could not match. He brought near-apocalyptic disaster to the Saxons. His impact on 9th century Europe even surpassed that of his father. Ragnar. Farewell, Ivar the Boneless. As his brother departed, Hvitserk had no heart for further fighting, and the merciful Alfred accepted Hvitserk's surrender. As part of the surrender, Hvitserk renounced his pagan faith and accepted baptism into Christianity, fulfilling the wish Ragnar had once harbored to join the Christian faith. Alfred gave Hvitserk a new Christian name, Athelstan, and Hvitserk would live under this new identity in East Anglia. When this news reached Kattegat, Ingrid naturally became the Queen of Kattegat. In the story's final scene, Ub and Floki sat leisurely on the beach, watching the sunset, as serene as elders untroubled by worldly matters. After all, this type of life was the best resolution for the faith Ragnar believed in.
There's so many things that I need to know. You don't need to know anything. It's not important. Let the past go. People love me. You remember Ragnar?
Of course I do. Disturbs my nights. He's always hanging around. I can't get rid of him.
Thus concludes the first part of the Viking trilogy, Viking Legends. I wonder if everyone is satisfied with this ending. However, I must tell you a heartbreaking truth. Historically, the real endings of Ragnar's sons were not quite like this.